guys, it's Thursday and we're going to do Thursday's reading lesson. I just want to remind you that tomorrow we have virtual club day, so we won't have a reading lesson for Friday. So if you want to go on ClassTag on the Meavers ClassTag website, there is a link for the virtual club, so you can come on and do virtual clubs with us. I will be doing Kahoot trivia at 12 o'clock. So you can look up my Zoom code and you can do that with me tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Today we're going to be on page 2. We're going to be on page 218, and it's going to look like this. And it says the night the Martians landed, and we're going to be talking about cause and effect. So before we talk about cause and effect, I'm just going to show you a little video about cause and effect and why things happen because something happened. So we're going to look at that real quick. So let me share my volume with you so you can hear it.
Cause and effect. I got into big trouble yesterday. It all started when I was walking my dog, Puddles. Puddles saw my cousin Dana on her way back from the grocery store. She broke off of her leash, jumped up on Dana, and Dana's groceries spilled all over the ground. And that wasn't even the worst of it. An innocent bypasser, just walking along, slipped on a banana. Yeah, and it gets worse. He bumped into a police officer who blew his whistle, and his partner sped up like it was a crime scene. There's a lesson in all of this. Look out for causes and effects. An effect is something that happens, like Dana spilling her groceries. A cause is why that thing happens. In this case, because Puddles jumped up on her. An effect sometimes has more than one cause, like the police officer blowing his whistle. It happened because the man slipped, because Dana dropped her groceries, and because Puddles got off her leash. A cause sometimes has more than one effect. Look at all the commotion Puddles caused. Oh, and there's another lesson in all of this. Never let Puddles get off her leash.
Okay, so as you can see there was more than one effect. So we're going to go back to page 218, and we're going to look for our clues that we talked about, or our signal words that we talked about yesterday. So some of the signal words we talked about yesterday were because, as a result, therefore, but, then, if. So we're going to look for those words as we read through the story, The Night the Martians Landed. So I'm going to go ahead and read you the story. Look for those words in the story, and you can circle them if you hear them. So it says, on October 30th, 1938 was perhaps the most frightening night that thousands of Americans would ever experience. It was the night that the science fiction novel, The War of the Worlds, was presented in the form of a radio news broadcast. Orson Welles, who would later become a famous movie actor and director, made the broadcast from a studio in New York City. The story was about Martians invading the Earth. Before the program began, Welles explained that the news broadcast was fiction, but many listeners tuned in late. Therefore, they missed Welles' explanation that this was a radio play. As a result, thousands of people thought that the Earth was really being invaded by Martians. As people listened, some began to panic because the broadcast seemed real. Some people called their friends and relatives to warn them. Others alerted local police stations to the danger. Still, others reportedly ran out into the streets, into parks, and into their cars, hoping to escape the invasions. Newspapers reported huge traffic jams and overloaded telephone lines. It was a terrifying night for both citizens and police alike. The next day, the newspapers told of the fake news broadcast. The headlines claimed that thousands of people had heard and believed it, but none of it was true. So that actually, in 1938, is something that actually happened. So because people tuned in late, they didn't hear that the radio broadcast was actually a play that they were putting on. Back in that day, there was no televisions, so you weren't really sure if that was true or false if you were tuning in late to something. As you heard it, you were hearing it as it was the news, because that's the way the play was being portrayed. So we're going to look back at the story, and there was 3 signal words that were used to help us figure out the cause compared to the effect. So we're going to look at that. Those 3 words were but, therefore, and as a result. So you can see it said before the program began, Wells explained that the news broadcast was fiction, but many listeners tuned in late. Therefore, they missed Wells' explanation that this was a radio play. As a result, thousands of people thought the Earth was really being invaded by Martians. So we're going to look over at page 219. And on that page, we have cause and we have effect. So the cause was many listeners tuned in late and missed hearing Wells say they were listening to a play. So because people tuned in late, what happened? What was the effect of that happening? Those listeners believed they were hearing a live news broadcast. So they had missed all about it being fiction. So when they tuned in late, they thought they were hearing something that was a live news broadcast. So after that happened, what was the cause then that led to the last effect? Those listeners believed Martians were invading Earth. So the cause of this effect was they believed they were invading Earth. So what was the effect because they believed they were invading Earth, because they listened to the news broadcast after it had already started? Many people panicked. And we also talked about the word panic and using our helpful context. So you can see down here, it says some began to panic. So we talked about what does the word panic mean. We talked about using our context around panic. Some people called their friends, some alerted the police, some ran out into the streets. So panic is it like a strong feeling of terror or being extremely afraid. So we use those helpful context clues in our paragraph around the word panic to figure out what the word panic means. So go ahead and turn the page to page 222. And on page 222, we're going to give a short response. And we're going to describe the overall text structure the author uses to organize the ideas. So make sure when you explain in the passage, you use evidence and where it comes from. Okay, so we know that the text structure that the author used, because we just did it, was cause and effect. So we're going to put the author uses cause and effect overall to describe a radio broadcast that caused a lot of people to panic. That was the effect. Because a lot of people tuned in late. That was the cause. So go ahead and write that. If you need to pause, you can go ahead and pause. Like I said earlier, tomorrow we won't have a live Zoom. We're doing the virtual clubs. So if you want to join us for the live Zoom, it'll be on Monday morning at 9 a.m. Miss Miller starts it off, and our Zoom code is 207-420-7277. Okay? So have a great weekend. Hopefully I'll see you in my virtual club tomorrow. I hope you have a great Thursday. Bye, guys.